Well, why can't we see anything? And how would I tell? Oh no, look, it says I'm elapsed time. Things have begun.
Why isn't it showing any video?
I don't know that. Don't ask me things like that.
We are live.
We're live.
Can they hear us?
I don't know.
Are you chatting with anyone that's...
Anyone here? I don't know if they can see me because, like I told you, Chrome doesn't think I have a camera, and I think it is someone going through Chrome. So that's fun. See? Wait, what's that mean? I don't know. Started again, so at least we have something, but then can't we figure it out too?
I am still trying to do that.
Okay, cool, man.
Here we go.
Hey. Me and Totoros are here for you who probably aren't watching. This is good.
This is good.
This is the closest we've been to good, at least.
Do we...
Hey, I'm totally there. I see myself live streaming.
Sort of.
A little delayed. I'm going to stick to the other screen so I don't freak myself out. Oh, it says Stephen Kleiman is here. Hello, my friend. I'm reading to just you probably right now. No, I haven't started reading yet, but hopefully we'll get some people in here and I will start reading. Hey, thanks. Hi, Allison. I'm super glad to virtually have you here. I'm glad this is really working, it seems like. Oh, okay, cool. I feel like maybe we'll give it 5 minutes to let some more people show up. Because I think it says one person's watching, which I know now is a lie because Steven and Allison are here, so YouTube's a liar. Now we know. Oh, 5 people are watching. Woo, woo. Okay, now we can get started. This is like what I'd get at a bookstore. Okay. So, yes. Justin says there's a new link now, and he's going to share the new link. Because who knows what happened to the old one, because I'm still in the window for the old one. But I just trust all things technology right now very well, in a happy way. Okay. So Justin, who's one of the editors at Banango, gave me some questions that I could start with. And if any of you have seen me read, you know that I kind of do, or my favorite part is the Q&A, and I often will just kind of start with questions and then build from there. So, okay. So one of the questions he asked was, who was I reading at the time that I wrote this book? So I picked up the book. I was in a class with Marie Howe, and so before any class I take, I like go and buy all their books, and I read all their books before I take them. So I bought all of Marie's books, but I only brought one downstairs. As you can see, I'm in my son's room. And then What the Living Do was really important to me. Okay, and just before that, I was in Bruce Snyder's class, and he had us read Into Perfect Spheres, Such Holes Are Pierced by Catherine Barnett. Also, Marie had us read Some Ether by Nick Flynn. And Death Tractates by Brenda Hillman. A lot more books too, but these were the ones that stood out to me because Brenda Hillman lost a mentor, and Nick, lost a few people. Okay, Catherine Barnett lost 2 of her nieces, if I remember correctly. This is all 8 years back, so just forgive me. And Marie lost her brother, which most people know about from this amazing book. So I had these kind of source texts that were crazy distressing to me at the time of losing someone, my grandfather, because it seemed like everybody knew death, but none of us knew how to understand it, and it was kind of terrifying. And that's what I was kind of writing into. So, and so sometimes I'll get to it as I get to there. So I'm going to start with this poem. So called The Tumors Grew in Me as well. I cried over them, spent money on them, bought an earpiece for my cell phone, and I felt the tumors in other ways, how tumors do, pressing up against what they are not of, passing newly something through the nerves. I grew afraid of the moment of resolve. The woman left living her resolve. The man left his, not my grandfather's. His death is not a response. We buried him with the tumor still inside him. How could we? So, I mean, that one's pretty clear, right? I feel like we talk about tumors all the time, and especially, tumors in your brain and the cell phones and all these things. And yet when people die of tumors, they keep their tumors forever, which is kind of this terrifying image. And it was for me. It still is all these years later. Okay, but so part of the response of someone's death and being in this grad program surrounded by poetry and reading all these poetry books, I decided a lot of my poems I felt like were pushing back in a reactionary way, like frustrated with poems, feeling like imagery and like figurative language was like crazy lies of making not beautiful things beautiful, and how could we? So here are two poems that go together that kind of reflect on all of that. Like bird, like body, like grace. I think you want it all more beautiful. What can I do for you? Is there a bird? Is the bird like another more beautiful bird? Is the human body like a lamb's bleat? Is there an invitation from the girl's naked body to see her also as the grief of me? I don't think you want to hear that the water falls like grace, but perhaps the horse is always in the field for you. The morning passing in the sun, sketches of starfish, a broken egg in the sink, all waiting. But in the still growing field of corn, stalks only up to my ribs, my grief, 10 feet tall, wanders. A haunting thing. The clouds could be described as the falling laugh of him, but what then? So there's I feel like sometimes I'm making poetry jokes, and it's usually I'm reading to an audience that I can hear. And so I would hear them laugh. So I feel like I'm awkwardly laughing at my own jokes. But for some of my friends that are in this chat, they know I do that anyway, laugh at my own jokes. So, but yeah, so there's this always joke of that there's so many birds in poems. There's always birds in poems. So this was kind of my moment asking, like, are there really birds all the time? But there are so many birds. There's always a bird. It's constant. Okay, so this is the opposite poem for that one. This is for those who want it ugly. The horses I saw at the farm, teasing their muscles, looked unable to control themselves, and still the flies will never leave them alone. They came to the fence for carrots I'd forgotten back at the house. I wanted to kill every fly, slap the horse's muscles until they fell flat. Another fly, now in the closet at work. He seems impossible, so in a moment of frivolity, I thought he was born from my leg. I remember the maggots on the cloth instead of the meat in Reddy's experiment in 1668, and the final success of Pasteur in 1859. 200 years to prove life does not come from non-life. But what about life coming from what might be called a deformed life? Something grows. My mother asks if I cut the apples too quickly. I tell her I worry more about losing my finger than she worries about me losing my finger, but I do rush, anxious to get the apples in the oven, and I do worry. And the flies return to me even in winter, and my life continues misshapen. My voice is ugly. The space between us is sometimes ugly too. And so many last memories of him, if you could call them that. But yeah, I don't know if you guys had this in old science textbooks, but I loved the little drawings they did of all the experiments to figure out if life came from non-life, because people were just convinced of this, that maggots were coming from the dead and like blah like hurrah. And it wasn't until that Pasteur had that cool curved beaker and they realized where life could start there and where it couldn't. I think that was the final win. I know my mother's probably watching this and she is thinking she's getting the science all wrong, but maybe not. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a different question, which will lead me to different poems. Okay, let's see. Why this title? That's a good question. Named after death. So I'm going to read a poem about that. And then maybe I'm not. Maybe I lost that already. No, here it is. Okay. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about Named After Death. I was named after death. At 7, I saw my great aunt in a coffin after she'd forgotten my name and given me her small Chinese dolls. At the funerals of her 7 brothers and 3 sisters, the coffins were kept closed. My mother didn't let us throw dirt on their graves, and it is a terrible sound that I was glad not to be closer to. Death took a shape beside me of a horse, and I grew, and it grew, and though I am a small thing, it is a large thing, its leg the length of me, trotting around a room. So for Jews, you're often named after someone who's recently passed or just someone that passed that was very dear to you. And sometimes they just take the first letter. So my first name is Sarah after my grandma Sarah. And my middle name, what I published under Blake, the B is actually taken from my Aunt Belle, who's one of Sarah's daughters. But Sarah Bell, my mother, where it sounds a bit like a cow, like the Clarabelle. So she went with Blake, which I'm very happy she did because I love the sound of Sarah Blake. But yeah, so there was that where you're kind of named after death, like you carry death around with you as a Jew, I feel like, even if you don't practice. And then there's this other part of it, which is that I feel like there's this second coming of knowing after someone's died. You take on a new identity after death. One of my friends just died, and it's been amazing to kind of hear all the stories come out about him. You know, like as a friend, I had access to one small part of him where our friendship came out of, and everybody had all these other accesses. So I liked that the title coming out of the title of this poem could kind of take on that bigger form of being both that tradition of naming, but also like what new identities you have after dying, and what new identities specifically for these poems my grandfather kind of had after dying, and what that was like kind of for my whole family. Okay. So now I'm going to just read two poems that I don't really read very often, just because I want to. And we have 24 minutes. It's going to be great. So this is called My Grandfather Can No Longer Dress Himself. My period stopped after a day. I've become obsessed with half of my left eyebrow because the hairs stick out. Fuss, fuss, I'll pull them out. I feel unsettled. How much uterine lining is left in me? Maybe tomorrow the hairs will not stick out. Maybe some baby will need that lining. Cute little baby dumpling, named Pyomyeni after my Russian great-grandparents, because it is their 10th son who is dying. Baby, baby, baby dumpling. Fire in the belly, cooks the baby, eat the baby, yum, yum, baby dumpling. Soft, smooth baby eyebrows, pell-mell, kick the belly, big, big belly that's no damn good at reading the chemicals, estrogen, progesterone, adrenaline, belly stopper starters. No more ladylike eyebrows for me. I'm all crazy lady now, crazy baby lady woman, falling out of bed, busy doing things, folding pasta over and making little fork patterns for Pelly, putting clear gel on with a mascara wand for my shiny eyebrows, looking all pretty, stopping all the men going, that lady's not stressing. She's got eyes like the fucking Queen of Egypt. Yeah, pretty lady me, listening for babies in her belly, for hares planning something, waiting for her grandfather to say, goodbye, baby. I loved you all the time. That is an all too accurate portrayal of stress. Okay, so now I wanted to do a shorter poem and also share the work part of it because I think this is maybe my favorite pairing in the book. So all the poems in the chapbook are paired up with pages from the workbook in ways that became kind of fascinating to me as they grew and like took shape, and I worked with an illustrator, and it turned out the workbook came like years later. I had never thought I would do a workbook, and it was actually when my other grandfather was dying, and I kind of was in this stress mode and was like, I'm gonna write activities for these poems I already have, and luckily it worked out. So this is called For the Body. Even in the coffin, I could not say if my grandfather were dead. I would have said so if not for my mother already saying it into my ear. I said, I am sure he's dead, so we could bury him. But if it weren't for knowing his blood had been replaced with formaldehyde, I would have said he could be alive again. It seemed so obvious at the sight of him then. So most Jewish funerals are closed casket, and that was so for most of my relatives on his side of the family, which he's one of 11, so it was a lot of funerals throughout my childhood. But because we're the close family, they let you see before they let everybody else in. So that was one of the only times. There was a time when I was way younger, so I don't have those memories as well, and it wasn't a person I was as familiar with as my grandfather who lived with us all those years. Yeah, okay, but let's do the workbook. So the workbook page, our printer, of course, just like tried to just go kaput on us, but it kind of looks like this. And it's this weird maze of words that I kind of view as my mom whispering to me, and trying to get through the maze, I feel like I'm kind of reading creepy whispers. Anyway, I'm gonna read them to you. So this is kind of how the maze goes to me, because I feel like even though there's only one route out to the ear, that it's you want to read them all anyway. So this is me kind of reading through the maze. Are you so sure he is dead? Are you quite sure he? Are you so sure? Are you sure he is dead? Are you so sure he is dead? I like it. Okay, next thing that we're gonna do. Which poem gave me the most trouble? I love this question. Really, I remember them all giving me trouble. And also, I think it's that it was 8 years ago, so I'm not sure. I'm like, oh, this is all wonderful, and this was all terrible, and oh, these poems probably came easily, but also remembering that a lot of these poems came kind of like frantically in the middle of the night, and were like 5-page beasts that then had to be shortened and trimmed and turned into the poems I would be proud of. So this poem is called The Ear Opened Itself to Me, and it's kind of the poem that started it, because it's a poem about my mother's brain tumor, which we found out about first. And it turned out it was an acoustic neuroma, which is benign, which is a hilarious thing to call a tumor, because if it keeps growing, it still kills you. But it's not cancer, so it's benign. So my mom likes to say that this is the only good thing that came out of that time. It was, so this is The Ear Opened Itself to Me. 1. My mother's brain tumor has taught me about the ear. Not many websites have pictures that are not drawings. Science is most clear in diagrams. An acoustic neuroma grows as a mess on the 8th cranial nerve that takes impulses from the middle and inner ear to the brain. It is taken for granted that 2 nerves will be lost in the operation. These communicate balance. The left side of the brain can manage, but it takes days to stop the spinning, takes months to walk well. The last time I walked with her, she was kicking her right foot out. 2. I had imagined the nerves as one bone spines. The one photo I found showed them as raw meat. When I'm ripping the fat off my chicken because I have no good knives, I often cut myself with my fingernails and think about salmonella. I often tear the meat, and in the torn meat, columns, myofibrils, reveal how they reach out to each other. That's how they resemble the nerves. How many parts of the body resemble the muscles? The nerves are not the color of muscles, but of candied ginger, which I've seen prettiest half dipped in white chocolate. But ginger makes my tongue burn. My mother, I remember, sat across the table pulling air through a tight circle made with her lips to see how cold it felt. We couldn't explain it. Her tongue gone numb, soon her cheek, soon the roof of her mouth. 3. There is a 40% chance that the nerve that communicates hearing will also be lost. Which it was. This is based on the procedure performed all over the country, but just one man handles the last 3 hours of the 8-hour act when the nerves are cleaned. No one has died, he tells my mother, for him. Now the possibility is a threshold. 4. Sometimes I think of sinking my mother's temporal bone in the sea because it is the densest bone in the body. I could time how long it takes to get where I can't pull it back. 5. An ear infection is also known as otitis media. Bacteria gets trapped in the eustachian tube. The middle ear swells and turns red with swelling. Abnormalities of the cochlea cause deafness. Abnormalities of the external ear are common. There are 10 parts: helix, scapha, tragus. 6. The inner ear has a room, the utricle. The name of a fruit, too, the world's smallest, one-seeded, indehiscent, the size of a grain of salt. I could hide it in a crack in my tooth. I could hide my mother's acoustic neuroma under my tongue and think of it as a seed. It could bloom into a sound. I kind of rushed the ending there, but that's a long poem. But that started as a way bigger poem, probably about 5 pages, and it had no stanza breaks. It was just really long lined and terrifying. I remember bringing that into workshop, and because it was about like my mother's brain tumor, everyone was like, "Very nice, Sarah, very nice." And my professor, Bruce Snyder, very carefully went through it with me, and as we teased out how to take it from me freaking out into being the best poem it could be, and talked about sections, and he gave me essays about poems and sections to read, and how poems can move and how poems can be digressive, and it was just kind of this amazing experience to go through something like that in a time where I really needed that structure and taming and someone's focus, because I couldn't generate that myself at that time. There was no focus to be had. And then the ending, I remember, it's had a million endings, this poem, and every time, and Bruce was just like, not quite, not yet, not good enough, not as good as the rest of the poem, this, that, the other thing, until we got to this one, where it's a seed in my own mouth that's blooming into sound. which is this thing that we were kind of losing and didn't know how much more of it we would lose and didn't really know what that meant even. Now we know a lot about one-sided deafness and what that means. Like you can't, it's like your eyes, like, you know, you play the game, or I would play the game in the morning where like you cover one eye to see like what really is the loss of depth perception. What's that like? But the loss of hearing, like you can't even quite mimic for yourself. Like you think you're squishing your ear, but like you can still hear fine. Um, or enough, because you can't tell where sounds are coming from anymore. So my mom will walk all around the house looking for me, and I'll have been like across the room from her, you know, like, or, you know, around the corner, like out of sight. And so no idea. So yes, hearing is weird. But yeah, also I just like, there was an acoustic neuroma on Grey's Anatomy one year, and that person was just fine, just woke up and was like, thanks doctor, like like they were like, it's a long recovery, but like really the first, like you're not really like talking at first and you're vomiting all the time because you've lost all your control of your balance. So it's this really hard, so, but that was weird to see. Yeah. And also that like one surgeon does these things, where really multiple surgeons are part of these things. And somebody specializes in one part, and some like taking the tumor out, another person specializes in cleaning the nerves. It's a lot. Okay. I'm going to jump to maybe what I'm, why I write, what I'm reading now. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Do you guys have questions? I see 10 people are watching now. We've doubled our numbers. But I'd be happy to take a question or just keep reading poems. I know there's a lag too, so I don't want to rush anything. While you think of questions, I'll hold up random books that I'm reading right now. So I'm reading Lo Kwame Ann's Yearling, and I'm sorry if I've said your name wrong. I don't know where the camera is. There it is. Ha ha ha. Thanks, Lindsay. Lindsay's nice. I'm reading Khadija Queen's Non Sequitur, which I picked up at Philolalia, which is the small press festival at Temple that happens yearly now. It was the third one. And then I just bought this yesterday because I went to see Stuart Dybek read, and I learned that I was saying his name wrong for years. Stuart Dybek read, and it was awesome. And I got his book, and yeah. All right, I'll just read another poem. I got poems for days. Okay, we only have 10 minutes. Okay. So we were a family of 7 for a really long time. I'm one of 4 kids, but then my grandfather lived with us. So there's 7. Seven is mentioned in this poem, and it's not clear why. So now you know why, because you attended this reading. Super cool. Push. Why their collection? The insects. Perhaps it is their birth. They pass one over another on the blades of grass. Today, together, have we come to yellow? Always now I hear of it. 2 doves appeared. Blame is in the flowers. Mercy too. I don't know how to ask for them. The earth turns again, backwards in one way, 7 ways, a way for each of us. And then, so I think it was the same semester that all of this was going down, but I might be wrong. But I got to take this class with a Chinese lit scholar on like ancient Chinese poetry, and it was just kind of an amazing experience to learn so much. Because later I took classes where sometimes we'd go into some Chinese poetry, but with like just a poet who kind of adored it from the poetry side of things, not from the scholarly side of things, and had this historical reference to all of, like, just a massive amount of knowledge that she had as a scholar. Um, but so there's, and I've my youngest sister is Chinese, and I've just always felt, I guess, this connection to China and Chinese literature and all that. So this comes up in this poem. Sometimes I think I'm finished. What would 10,000 birds look like? What would they look like in flight? The Chinese poets say 10,000 for infinity. Flying by me in my sleep, they do seem to go on forever. They seem like symbols, or one symbol, and they could be likened to the passing of my grandfather if I could see them passing and not also be moving. Sometimes I come across his handwriting in the house. This still happens. There's still certain board games I don't like to take out of the closet because I know that it has all of Pop's handwriting on it. I think I know a few other family members too that are sometimes like, oh, but not that game. We don't have to play that one right now. It's just still hard for all of us. And oh yeah, but I remember my teacher at the time said, that's how you could tell kind of a newbie translator of Chinese, was that they put 10,000 something instead of saying infinity, not knowing that that was just how it was written. That was just, which I also love, like that you just pick a number that's like so big to visualize, and it's infinity. Yes. But yeah, I had a lot of trouble talking about what it was like to lose someone, and I guess it's like a weird survivor's guilt, even though like it's not something that's traumatic in that way, and you don't, and it doesn't, and it's not the same level because you didn't experience the cancer at the same time or something. But there's just this sense of like how the ways in which we go on after he's left are very bizarre to us. But anyway, so I wrote another poem about that, and that's the poem I end with. So I'll read that to kind of end talking. Loss. I'm consumed by the beaded lines running down a wedding dress, and pleased by the lack of red in my life, and I'm liking more the browns. The passed down images of the Chinese poets that mean also death or noble or homesick or heaven distract me. But I can't write about drinking wine because I don't drink wine. The old American male poets find they can now write about pussy in a way that is considered mature, but I see right through them and their overuse of the word wetness and their unending love. I would like to see the rings they bought their wives. A whole book of the engagement rings of poets. I should imagine climbing a mountain or crossing a river or watching the lone goose. The stones are cold. The loss of him seems to go on forever because it does. My life continues to come in and not come out, and I imagine my wedding, and I imagine my wetness on the night of my wedding. I allow myself to think of things beyond him, and I am flooded by them. Yeah, there was there was a time where I was working, or I was trying for this job, and it involved all these poets, and I was like, I'm just going to read a book by every poet that this organization is affiliated with. And somehow a bunch of those books by old white men use the word wetness when like describing women's sexual pleasure, and it was like, what is happening here? So I was glad to get that one in there. A little bit. Okay, so we only have like 3 minutes left, and I am gonna talk. The question that said I had to answer was, why do I write? And it's one of those strange questions, because it I don't think I could ever not write. Like, and I go through big periods of not writing. I won't write for months, but I never am worried it won't come back, because I just know I've been writing poems since I was 10 or something silly like that. Like, I just write poems, and even in middle school when I wrote poems, I wrote one poem a year, and that was like my goal. So at this point, I'm just reckless with my writing. I write way too many poems compared to that. Um, but yeah, but writing comes out of stress, which my life doesn't seem to lack for. But I think maybe that's an effect of love, and like letting enough people into your life that you run up against their stresses, and you get involved in too many people's stresses. And but it's kind of wonderful and needed, right? And that's part of being human. So that's, I guess, why I write, is to just work through things. But then I want to make it the most amazing poem that's ever been, not just for me. Uh, like, I hope they speak to other people. I hope they move in ways that poems don't always move, or that they work together in a way that hasn't happened before. And that now this chance where you can release things online and for free, and with workbooks by their side. Like, I just want poems to have a million access points, like people do, like you discovered all the other ones after they die sometimes. I want poems to do that. So I have a minute left. So I want to answer any questions if there are any, but also just thank you guys so much for watching and participating in this chat along the side, and giving me thumbs up and things along the way, because it's been really awesome to have that, because it's very weird to talk to a camera slash myself, I guess, the mirror of me. um, you guys are amazing. And I'm glad that live readings kind of work. We can do this. I would visit somebody else's reading for a while in the middle of the night. Um, but yeah. All right. Well, you know how to reach me if you want to. It's been really great to read to you guys, and I'm going to press stop streaming now. Bye.